Fish tank water. Lots of requests for more info on the water in this tank and the equipment and all that stuff. So we'll try and keep it brief. Equipment first. 2 big filters. Really difficult to see because it's very dark down there. Big Eheim filters. That one's full of 30 ppi sponge. I think this is in another video. That one's got your standard Eheim media pack in it, obviously on all the time. That's about 1700 litres an hour on each one. This is about 500 litres, so that's turning that water over a great many times an hour. And then we've also got this little top sump up here for the plants. Quite a few people have seen that already. There's a tiny little pump pushing water into that end. There's also some nitrate removing resin in there, which we can talk more about, but I thought while we do a bit of info on the water, we could do a quick water change too. So we will hoover out as much stuff as you can find. Lots of that stuff there, we'll get rid of that. Any old manky leaves, we'll get rid of those. And they've been fed, and if you look down here, the filters have washed the food into the corner. Now he's eating that, and he'll likely finish that off, and they can't get to that anymore and they can't find it. So that is why you must have other fish in your tank if you want to keep these, because they will remove that food within the next half an hour. He's already doing his best, and then that food won't cause a problem. I can't get to that every day, so they look after that for me. So equipment wise, pretty standard stuff, but they're just big. There's UV sterilizer on the right, but I really don't know what that does. I might even get rid of that. But yeah, they do quite a good job. So we will give it a quick clean, and then we'll put some water in, and we'll do a little bit more about what water goes in and what water comes out. So that's 50 litres removed. Really quick hoover. You can see that in there, the amount of stuff that comes out when it's kind of clean. There's all sorts of bits in there. That's also a bit brown, that water, and that's because that new bit of wood's in there. So that's releasing tannins and stuff and colouring up the water a bit. So I will probably change a bit more water than normal to keep that from going too brown, but it's not too bad at the moment. It's working quite well. So we'll do another 2 buckets of this, but you can see now that's settling just how much gets hoovered up, even though we're not really trying. So that normally happens twice a week. 4 buckets that are that big come out, so that's 25 litres roughly in there. So 100 litres a week, twice a week come out of here. One thing to watch, and this is a key one, is your KH value. At the minute in that tank, if I test that, there is no KH, which is a bit dangerous to be honest, because your pH will disappear as soon as your KH has gone. And the carbonate hardness will buffer the pH up so it can't change too fast. If the KH all goes, the pH will start to drop quite fast. You need to watch that. A lot of people say they can't take pH changes, but these fish have changed pH quite a lot without any trouble. I think the problem is if the pH gets down to the 4.5 area, the filtering bacteria can die off quite quick, and then you get ammonia, and that kills your fish because you'll panic and to it back up, the KH will increase, and the ammonium will turn to ammonia, and that's when the fish die. So one of the key things to measure, and that almost determines when you change water, is what your KH value is. The filters are constantly using up KH as they transform ammonia into nitrite into nitrate. The KH will start to disappear. So KH will continue to drop. That's why you've got to change water regularly, and you've got to change it with water that's got a decent KH value in. So I've just tested this tank. It's like 1 drop, goes straight to yellow. The water that's going to go in is KH6. It's RO water with 25% HMA in it, which gives you a nice KH of 6. I have tried using remineralisation before, but the KH was too low, so the KH kept going down and the pH kept dropping. So now it comes in at 6, the KH, 100 litres of that keeps this nice and steady on a pH of about 6.5 until the next water change. So I'll take 2 more buckets out and then we'll fill it back up again. Right, so that's filling back up now. It's going to be a bit noisy, but that is filling up with water that is, as I said, 3/4 RO, 1/4 HMA. So the TDS of that is about 100. The TDS in this tank TDS out my tap is 300. So I don't know if anyone knows about TDS, but total dissolved solids, it doesn't really tell you much. It just tells you how much stuff's in your water. So it's an idea of how good your water is, but it's not a great idea. One thing you might want to try though, certainly in the UK, is you can go on the website for your water supplier and they will give you a report about what's in your water. I don't know if this is going to work, and this is why I don't use tap water. So there's all sorts of horrible stuff down that side, and all of that is in the tap water in varying amounts. I mean, I'm no chemist and I don't know much about what we got: benzene, ammonium, boron, chloride, nickel, blah blah blah, cyanide. I don't quite know why that's in the tap water, but there is some. Tetrachloromethane, that don't sound good, but there's some of that too. I mean, it's only small amounts, but it's there. Apparently the nitrate from the tap is 35, which I don't believe, because my test kit says it's much higher. And in the summer that'll be even higher. I don't know why, but summer it's always high. So you can find out exactly what's in your tap water if you download one of these reports. And that's the reason I binned off tap water, because ever since I've done RO water, I haven't had a single fish problem. I haven't got any algae, and the colours on these are really good. So I know they say you can keep them in tap water, and I used to, but I had random fish dying, I had fish problems, I had unhealthy fish. I might be wrong, but I much prefer RO, where you know there's nothing else in the water other than what you're doing. The TDS of RO water from a good machine is about 6, so it is just water, and then obviously you add a bit back in to put the minerals and nutrients back into the water, and it's worked really well. So that should push my KH back up to about 4 or 5 when I put that in, and that will keep my pH stable until the next time I do a water change. So that's one of the key things with these, is you have to do a regular water change to make sure the KH level stays in a good range. As I said, if that disappears, your pH will drop, and then you'll have all sorts of problems for one reason or another. The other thing, of course, to check in here, and not many people check it, is the ORP. I check that fairly often. So that's your redox potential. I don't fully understand that, but the bit I do understand is it's your tank's ability to deal with decomposing matter. If you've got a really high ORP as well, you'll have less bacteria in your tank. I think the ORP of chlorinated water is really high, because obviously there's nothing going in that because of the chlorine content. In here there's all sorts of bacteria, and that ORP range suppresses that bacteria just enough to keep things healthy. So the higher your ORP, the better. If you've got any dead zones in your gravel or substrate where there's very low oxygen, that can cause problems too. So that's filling up quite nicely now. It's nearly at the top. That will shut off when that reaches the top, and that happens twice a week. Try to do it regular. Some say that the fish learn about that kind of thing and they will not get so stressed if you're doing your water change at the same time every day. He's looking rather stressed at the moment, as you can see, and that one is hiding in there. but the others are all okay. They'll perk up as soon as it's done. You'll probably find as well, once you put new water in, they will start showing all signs of displaying and fighting and trying to pair up. It's already happening here. Check out the colours on him, because there's a bit of new water in there. So that always seems to kick that action off, which suggests that putting new water in can only be a good thing. The nitrates before I changed the water were about 10. They've possibly gone down a little bit, so not entirely sure what triggers that behaviour. It might be the temperature change, which spurs them on to make some babies. We don't know. I don't know. But yeah, twice a week for that. Keep it regular. Filter changes. I haven't cleaned these filters for months. I normally go by the flow rate, but they will be quite brown when I finally decide to do it. So maybe next time we'll take a filter to bits and see what's in there. Still a bit dark, can't see what's in there. And we'll give it a clean. And obviously you've got 2 filters running, only change one at a time. And because they're such big filters, I don't think I need to worry about ammonia or nitrite. These were even switched off overnight by accident and everything was fine the next day, so I'm not quite sure how long the bacteria can last in a filter, but as I say, both ways switched off all night and no problems at all with the tank. So I'm either lucky or having the filters off for a few hours doesn't really do much damage, even though they say run them constantly. But yeah, let's see. One thing I'm lucky enough to have is this, which has been absolutely great. That will show me on the phone what the fish tank parameters are, and it will show you that everywhere too. So if we go to the phone, you can see there the current state of the tank. So that water obviously went in slightly cold because it's dropped down to 27. But the pH is sitting at 6.4, but you can see that might start to go up a bit because that water's gone in with the extra KH in it. So we'll watch that. There you go, it's starting to go now. That will slowly increase. Maybe not, but this will also show you over the last week what the pH has been up to. So that's the trace for, what's that, 5 days worth of pH. That big crash there was where the probes got taken out to do the last water change. So you can see that pH is just starting to climb back up now that new water with KH in is mixed around. That will keep going for a bit. You can also see this takes out the temperature. It does the redox as well, which is 365 millivolts, quite high. Also the conductivity, I don't know much about the conductance, but I need to find out more about that. But I think the high redox potential is only a good thing, and keeping that pH around about 6.5 is probably where you want to be. That will keep going up. Obviously the plants fiddle with that. If you inject CO2, it fiddles with the pH. So at night time it can fluctuate because the plants obviously aren't using up the CO2. CO2 is acidic, so the pH will go down and then it will come back up in the day. I've also found if you put your air pump on, that forces the CO2 out of the water. So the pH can drop, I think, if I remember that rightly. So all sorts of things will fiddle with the pH. Even that big piece of wood in there apparently could fiddle with the pH. Not too much, but it could do. So definitely watch that. But as I say, I don't think it makes too much odds for these. Don't use chemicals to fiddle with your pH. I think that's a bad idea. It is what it is. If you've got tap water that's pH 7.5, they'll get used to it. And I don't even think it changing much causes too much trouble for them. One thing I did want to demonstrate though, if this vid's not too long, is what happens to your redox potential if you put some fertiliser in a tank. Now I've stopped using fertiliser. This tank hasn't had any liquid fertiliser for weeks, but let's put some in and I will show you what happens. We'll do the recommended dose and then we'll watch the ORP and you'll see what happens when you put chemicals in your tank all the time, remembering that ORP is important and the higher number the better. So watch this. So 10 mils per 100 litres is the recommended amount, and you're supposed to do that weekly. So we'll do 50 mils because it's 500 litres, and we'll chuck it in. So that's 2 of those, they're 25 each. Now the ORP was on 360 something, I think. Put that in and put that in, and then we'll switch back to the display and we'll see what happens when that starts to circulate around. So currently the Redox is on 379, 380. It might take a while for that to pump around, but the good thing about this is it measures it real time, so if you can get one, it's really good. That pH has stopped at about 6.5, you can see there. This might not be the best camera to show it on, but I'll maybe work out a better way of showing this. So 381, Redox has gone up a bit. 380, we might need to speed this up, but that will drop considerably just because we added fertiliser, and you should see that start to happen soon. There it goes. I'll maybe put the graph up, but you can see that's dropping. Obviously it's got a mix round, but that really starts to drop soon. 7.1. So I definitely think it goes down to about 200 in the end. That just demonstrates what putting things in your tank can do to your water, and obviously we can't see any difference. Look, they're still behaving normally, but that lowered redox potential can affect all sorts of other stuff. If you don't know what that is, I'd have a Google because I don't think I can explain it properly. That's dropped down to 347 now. That'll keep going. So I'll maybe update with what it drops down to because it's probably going to be a few minutes. But it's a considerable change to the water just because we added some fertiliser. So if you're doing that every day, your ORP is taking a hit, quite a big one. I know I've seen people add all sorts of stuff to a tank, and as I say, all I do now is add water, and the cleanest water you can get. So still going down. Graph that. I'll put the graph up of where that ends up at the end. So that other drop there was the last water change we did, then it levels out about 400. That will update. 327, it's still going down. So we'll keep going down for quite some time. And yeah, that does make a difference. If you're suppressing that level continuously, it's affecting the tank. And these plants haven't needed fertiliser for weeks, so just as a test we'll put some in, show you what happens, just to prove it. But I don't think I will be adding fertiliser anymore. In fact, I think that bottle's nearly run out now, so that's that for fertilisers. The only thing I'll add is root tabs. So that's a bit about water, a bit about filters, as I understand it anyway. The main thing I look at is the KH level, because that can cause real problems if the pH drops too low. The pH drops too low, that kills the filters off, and then fairly quickly you're going to get ammonia in here because they're big fish doing all sorts of stuff, and that will kill them. I've seen them go from pH 5 back up to 7 in the time it takes to change that water, and they were fine. So I don't think the fluctuation in pH makes any difference to them, but I do think it can kill your filters off, and then that makes a difference to them. So yeah, check your KH. I check the nitrates now and again. If the nitrates get too high, they tend to not be as happy or colourful as they are at the moment. The nitrates in here are 10. I think last week they were 40. So simply because I wasn't changing enough water. There's stuff you can get to reduce nitrates you can put in. That works really well if you get the right stuff. But yeah, keep your nitrates low. People will again say that doesn't matter, but I'm just going on when I've seen these at their happiest, and that's when the nitrates are low. The KH is about 4, the pH is about 6.5, and obviously the temperature. I think at the moment these are on 28.4, so it's set to 28.5. Now the pH is 6.5 again, and the Redox is down to 320. So quite a difference in numbers from just adding some fertiliser. Yeah, that's a bit about water, and that's what I do for these fish.